myself again, but it's the only way.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday morning means we've got Liam Kennedy for a short period of time to get through as many questions as possible. And as always, we'll start with the questions on Twitter. Morning, Liam.
Morning, you all right?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Okay, straight into the questions. Stuart Taylor, Magic Pikey on Twitter says, could COVID do us a favour if it caused a short suspension of the season? I mean, Manchester United's game's off against Brentford tonight, Liam. Is that the kind of favour we're hoping for?
It wouldn't be bad, would it? I keep seeing sort of rumours this morning of this potential break in the season. I think it couldn't come soon enough for Newcastle United. If they can kick some games into the long grass into further in the season, then I think that couldn't be a bad thing. Get rid of a couple of those tricky Christmas fixtures, have a couple of weeks off, and let's get, plenty more Eddie Howe drilling and training under their belts and get into that January transfer window with the gap as small as possible. So yeah, if there was to be, I don't. At this stage, these things can develop very quickly. At this stage, I don't believe that there is going to be one. But look, it could happen and it could develop within days. So as is the case at every point during this COVID affected football campaigns, you just never know which way it's going to turn. And these things can change within days. But at this stage, we're just going to have to crack on and hope that this group of players can get through in as close as possible to the teams above us. We know now that the gap is going to increase this week because of that game where Watford and Burnley are playing each other. The gap will at least be 4 points, I think, if my maths is right, by the next time Newcastle United play. So it's already back to 2 games because they didn't take their opportunity at the weekend.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, I just hope COVID buggers off. I'm sick of the whole thing. And, I'd rather not have to rely on favours, but any cancellation of the season over the Christmas period is clearly going to benefit Newcastle United.
Can we not just wipe it and start again? Can we not just say...
I wish we could. I wish we could. Kenny Ranson says, I've recently heard that Alan Shearer could be taking a role with Newcastle. Have the club said anything about this, or is it just clickbait again?
I've not heard that. It could be the case, but I've not heard anything on that.
Yeah, me neither. And look, he's tied up with Match of the Day. That's the bottom line. He's got a big contract with the BBC.
He's got big money at the BBC as well, isn't he? So, and it's a pretty good gig that he's got. He's carved a real positive career for himself as a pundit. He's excellent. So I'd be surprised if he walks away from that lightly.
Yeah, me too. Okay, Adam Duda, he says, considering Howe has to do a near perfect job to keep us up, when is it okay to criticise him after some of the mistakes he's made? For example, always playing Lascelles, continuing to play Ritchie at left back versus Brentford, and Murphy at right back, who was at fault for a goal in a crucial game. Willock's bad too. Probably ties in with what I've just seen in the chat as well. Somebody asking, why on earth are people having a go at Howe and saying sack Howe on social media now? So what's your apparently? I mean, you're always going to get some idiot who's probably a Sunderland fan under the guise of a Newcastle fan on Twitter trying to stir things up. But yeah, I mean, it's a question from Adam. What's your thoughts on that?
I just think it's a really unfair assessment. Personally, I think a fair assessment if Newcastle United are still in this same position at the end of the season, I think there should be serious question marks about whether Eddie Howe should keep his job. I think on the smaller level, if you don't believe he should be picking a player, you're fully within your rights to criticise the manager from day one, if that's what you want. It's within your power to say if I don't agree that Jamal Lascelles should be playing. I hope. Look, and I say it as I say, call what I see. And I thought he was excellent. He was excellent against Burnley. He really was. Physically won the physical battle, which is what you have to do against a team like that. Absolutely. But does that mean he's the answer at Newcastle United? Absolutely far from it. And that goes for a number of other players. There might be times in the season where Jacob Murphy's had a good game. Javier Manquillo's done all right. He was shambolic, by the way. Shambolic again on Sunday. You were there, Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he's never when he's meant to be there, he's never within 40 yards of the defender inside of him. He's always too far out. And then with the defensive lines, it's been a couple of times this season, He's always the man who plays everybody on side. Always the man. That's not good. That's not the sign of a good defender. But we've got so many of those type players. Jamal Lascelles being another. Kieran Clark's mistake the other week. These are lads who were just kept. Who Manquillo was signed as a player just to keep Newcastle United ticking along in the Premier League. I remember Rafa Benitez talking about Javier Manquillo, talking about Joselu, and talking about how do you really think you would have signed him if he'd had the money to sign other players? That's what this football club has been for so long. That the fact that we're relying on Scott Wilson, Northern Echo, wrote a good piece highlighting the fact that Steve Bruce talked after the 5-0 hammering down there about defenders and about not having the players he needed to play the way that he would like to play. I think it was soon after he then switched to the 5 at the back, which he didn't ever want to play at Newcastle United. And Scott Wilson highlights the fact that the defenders that day in the 5-0 were Jamal Lascelles and Fabian Shaw. They're both still playing for Newcastle United at centre-half. It's a chronic underinvestment and mismanagement of the football club. And it looks to me like this season has probably just gone one season too far. That they're not going to get what they need out of this season. But you never know. You never know. I'm not writing it off, but I do have grave fears about this Christmas period. They've conceded 34 goals, I think, this season. If they come out of this week against Liverpool and Manchester City, which they could be any score, the levels they're playing at, any score. If they come out of this having not conceded 40 goals, I think you could almost claim that as a little minor victory. They've got to be in touch, and they're now, because they haven't done the business themselves. And we have to go back to the Brentford game. We have to go back to the Norwich game, despite the circumstances. And I would argue we have to go back to Sunday as well. It wasn't a 4-0. It didn't feel like a 4-0. And I know I've taken some criticism for saying that. It didn't feel like a 4-0. I think there was large periods of the game when Newcastle United were the better side. I think a lot of people are very keen when they get taken over by the emotion. This is where I have to be different. I can't be. People resonate with the things that I say because I am a fan as well. But you have to be. You have to analyze more than that. And I can't erase from my memory, and I think a lot of people let emotion take over themselves. I can't erase from my memory that game, that for the first 15 minutes, Newcastle United were the better side. I've seen some people saying they weren't. They were. They clearly were. They pressed high and had Leicester on the ropes. And I thought they were going to... I thought Callum Wilson in particular was going to exploit Ndidi being put back to centre-half, and Soyuncu, who at times... thinks he's got 25 minutes to play a pass. He's so slow at getting the ball away. I thought they were going to exploit that. They didn't. They dropped off 15 yards. Then weathered the storm after half an hour, and it was an even game really, going into the ridiculous decision and pathetic defending by Jamal Lascelles, who is really solely to blame for that tipping of the balance with about 5 minutes to go before half time. But even at 1-0, it's not like they responded badly. They came back at the back end of that half. Then even in the second half, after it went 2-0 even, Newcastle had the majority of the ball, created chances, got the ball wide, pinned Leicester back. It wasn't a 4-0 performance. It was just quality and levels, that Leicester had that level of quality to open Newcastle United up or force a poor player to make a bad mistake, which happened on numerous occasions. We didn't have that quality to force that. And we made bad mistakes, but that's levels. But in terms of performance, I've seen a lot of people after their game saying, no effort, no commitment, all this kind of thing. It wasn't that. There wasn't a lack of effort and there wasn't a lack of commitment. Nobody tossed it off. Nobody did at all. It was just levels of quality. And that's what you get when you have bad players. Bad players make mistakes. They make more mistakes than good players because they're bad players. And sadly, we're relying on players who probably aren't good enough. And too many of them who probably aren't good enough. I think there's a lot of players in that team, and I'm going off on a bit here, Steve. I know you want the questions. I know I've got to get away, but I'm going to get this off my chest. But there's too many of them, and everyone's pointing fingers at Lascelles. Everyone's pointing fingers at Manquillo, and rightly so. I've seen some people pointing the finger at Dubravka. He literally could have done nothing about the goals, by the way.
Nah.
And he never had a bad game. He was just Martin Dubravka. He never did anything wrong. He could do nothing about it. He wasn't to blame for that first goal. I actually pinpointed and said I thought it was Dubravka playing it when it was too tight. Somebody, I can't name who it was, somebody on Twitter sent me stills of where Lascelles received the ball, and it was incredible. The man is in 30 yards of space. If a professional footballer can't get the ball out his feet, have a look and see where another player is in that position, or even have the balls to make a decision and say, I've been given this, I can't do much with this, and just hammer it out 35, 40 yards up the pitch and complain at the goalkeeper for giving him it. Do it. You're a skipper, you're a captain, you're a professional footballer. You should have the brains to think that's my best option here is to get rid because I'm not going to be able to play this pass. He didn't. Try to be too clever. And that's half the problem is people like Lascelles, maybe he is, maybe he's delusions of grandeur. Maybe he thinks he's better than what he is. But I think that's half the battle. And I think there's a lot of intelligence in knowing your own limitations in any walk of life. Trying to pretend that you're better than you are at certain things only leads to failure. And I think if Lascelles accepts, look, I'm not a good ball playing centre half, and if he's going to give me the ball in tight situations, I need to just get rid of it. I need to play percentages. Then that's fine as well. There's nothing wrong with that, knowing your limitations. But they don't know that, and I think that was one of Lascelles' problems on Sunday is that he isn't a ball playing centre half. He's got very little skill proven on Sunday. I'm not saying this in general, but proven on Sunday he couldn't play balls in tight situations. I think this is what we've got though. We're actually going to be relying on that until probably mid-January. They're going to have to get by. They're going to have to get by, and they're going to have to get points. So I've seen some people saying they were a little disappointed with Eddie Howe in his post-match about how he didn't call players out or whatever it may be. Maybe I was just looking at social media at a really reactionary stage, but come on, put your thinking heads on. Why would Eddie Howe call any player out in that squad? He needs to get a tune out of every single one of them. And yes, I get the notion that it sounded a bit Steve Brucey after, it wasn't a 4-0 and we played all right, and yeah, you got beat 4-0. But I actually agreed with him. And I actually agreed with Steve. I've been on here and said that before, that certain times when fans have jumped off a cliff with stuff, certain times in games, yeah, Aston Villa being a key point. A lot of people were really upset with Aston Villa performance. I wasn't really that upset with it. I just seen a performance that was two poor teams, which has been proven again by the Premier League table and how Aston Villa have done. So yeah, that's my rant out of the way, Stephen. I'll go quick fire from now on in.
Keep off social media after the match, man. That's what you do. I don't go on till the next day, and that's the best policy because there's too many.
It's just to see a lot of it. You do see a lot of it, and you're like, I just want to, just answer some of it. It's some of it is illogical. It's illogical. It doesn't make any sense.
Because people are half frazzled from the alcohol they've consumed. Other people are just, knee-jerk reactionists anyway. Other people have, do make valid opinions, but just do what I do. Post a few photographs if you've been to the game, highlighting the people you've met or great to see such and such, and then come off, leave it, and then go on the next morning when everyone's a lot more rational, hungover, and thinking a little bit more clearly after they've seen some of the contentious decisions that they've only seen once in the game from a distance normally, i.e. the penalty, for example. And then until they've had time to recap on match of the day or on their phones or whatever, then they can make a rational decision. But until then, it's a waste of time trying to say X, Y, and Z have done this, that, and the other until you know exactly what's happened, and it's one of them things. It's what makes football such a great spectator sport, why shows like this work, and it's all about opinions. Next question from Colin Wilson. Do you think a director of football will be in place before January, or will Eddie Howe be given the kitty? And what are the chances of the Premier League having a break while the country's booster programme is further down the line? Could it happen? Well, we've addressed the last part of the question. Yeah. So let's look at the first part. Do you think a director of football will be in place? Are we any nearer with that? Will Eddie Howe be the one who decides what gets spent if there isn't a director of football in place?
I think the scouting team will have a say. Eddie Howe will have a say. I think it'll be a collaborative approach, and I don't think there will be a director of football in place by the time January comes around. At this late stage, I'm not really sure a director of football is somebody who can come in, assess, implement, and start attacking a transfer window at this short notice. I just don't think I think, like I've said previously, I think it's one that will probably be kicked. I haven't had this confirmed, but it always seemed to me that be one that would be kicked to the long grass.
Unless it's somebody who's involved in football on a day-to-day basis now and has a good command of the Premier League and the European leagues, then yeah, I just don't know. It's a good question, but it's a one we don't know the answer to, and we're still and ahhing, and the decision process clearly hasn't reached an end. Moving on, Thomas, what do you think of Graham Jones's role at the club now? It appears he isn't as prominent. I wonder if anyone is working on our defensive shape. I will chip in before you answer, Liam, and I just think it's something that Supermax brought up on a Thursday, and that is the fact that Howe and Tyndall are both on the touchline, both barking out instructions. And it seems that one is concentrating on the front line and one's concentrating on the back line. Am I wrong there, or am I right? You're in the press box for a lot of the games. Do you hear what they're saying? Can you hear if that's what they're trying to do?
Malcolm sits not far away from us. It's in James's Park in the press box. It's not something I'd noticed. Maybe he's watching with a keener eye probably than me with bits of writing and stuff to do, but it's one that I'll certainly watch out for. But they are very prominent. Tyndall is very, very prominent. So too, obviously, is Eddie Howe being the manager. There isn't as much of Graham Jones. Graham Jones has spent a lot of the time since Eddie Howe came in the stand, and I think he's been doing a lot of the feeding down information from a different perspective, a lot of the video stuff, which was the kind of job that I only refer back to when Jones was in charge for that brief period against Brighton. And I remember being at Brighton, and it was Stephen Clements who was the one doing that role. And I wonder if Graham Jones has been filling in a few of those duties. I have no idea. I think it's probably unfair to make any kind of assessment to say whether he's prominent or not, because we're not on the training ground. We don't see these things. We don't see what's said and done. So I think it's pretty unfair to make an assessment from my opinion on that. But is he as prominent as he was under Steve Bruce? He was effectively the number 2 under Steve Bruce. That's now Jason Tyndall, really. And he's got Graham Jones has got a slightly different role. That's quite obvious now. But who's to say that won't change? We don't know. Eddie Howe was really receptive to having somebody like Graham Jones on his coaching staff, because look, whatever you think of Graham Jones, he's a well-respected coach. He's got a good reputation, and I can see why they want to keep somebody like that around. Is he a manager? Absolutely not. I think we've seen that. But is he a decent coach? I think the results are there. I think there has been an improvement since he came to the football club. I think that's hard not to argue. Has it been transformative? Of course not. But I would definitely argue there has been a move in a positive direction in terms of organisation and coaching and things like that since he came to the football club. I don't want to be. I think it's not really a huge point. It's not going to have a huge bearing. Coaches, Pep Guardiola, I'll have 6 or 7 coaches, all of whom will take on different roles. Be more prominent in certain games than they will in others. And I'm not reading too much into the fact. It's not. I don't see it as one of those where I think some fans are hoping that Jones is booted at some point and binned off because they blame him for a lot of the poor results and not maybe having the impact that they hoped he would have, and sort of tarnished with the Steve Bruce era. But look, he seems to be a valuable cog in the wheel at this moment. I certainly haven't heard otherwise.
Yeah, okay. Albert Mooney says, will Howe have the balls to drop Lascelles, Willock and ASM? He would put in Fernandez, Hayden and Fraser.
One of the ones that I was going to point my finger at was Joe Willock. I'm not seeing a lad who I think is particularly enjoying himself. I'm never a fan of this because it isn't me. It's never the way I've carried myself. And Alan St. Maximin falls into this category too. But I've never been a big fan of this languid attitude. Maybe keep an eye on it. When the players walk out to the pitch, there's 2 people dragging their heels almost to walk out onto the pitch, and is it a swagger? Is it the style? Is it what they want to look like? It's not really me. I don't think it portrays a particularly positive image of a footballer. The way that Alan St. Maximin drags back and he's 10 yards behind everybody else when he walks out. Joe Willock's trying his best to keep up with St. Maximin rather than the rest of the players. I just don't get it. And I'm not a big fan of it. It doesn't create a positive impression for me initially of players going onto a pitch. I could be being pedantic. tell us. Honestly, come in the comments and say, Liam, you're being stupid by noticing this kind of thing. But it's just me. I look at it. If I'd seen, if that's how my son walks out on a Sunday morning when he's playing football, I'll pull him up about it straight away, because I think you're with your teammates, show a positive attitude. You're going up against another team, be professional, be proper. You took your shirt in. Like, maybe it's just little things like that I just don't like to see from professionals either, because I think kids copy that. I think Alan St. Maximin doesn't portray a best image of himself. He should just be striding on there like everybody else. And I think that reflects in his play. Joe Willock looks like a lost boy in that midfield. It's okay everybody's saying like he's not playing in his true position, but are we really meant to build a team like we did last season with 3 in midfield that just so Joe Willock plays well? He's not that good. He isn't that good. I don't see the point. And surely if you pay 25 million, which is what we think they've probably paid for a player, surely he can play in a 2 in midfield. Doesn't have to have another man to sort of make him a valuable player. That's why Arsenal got rid of him. That's why Arteta didn't fancy him, is that he can't seem to play in that 2, and he doesn't really look any better playing in the 2 for Newcastle. Look, it wasn't his worst game, actually, on Sunday. I thought he was a little bit more active, a little bit more involved. But is he disciplined enough? Is he good enough on the ball? No, he's not good enough on the ball. I think you need to be slightly better playing in that position. And he's struggling. He's struggling at the moment. It would be for me if they had better midfield options to take him out of the team. And I'll cause controversy by saying I don't know what's wrong with Sean Longstaff at the moment, but I would much rather have him in the team. Isaac Hayden, could Isaac Hayden be any worse? I think Isaac Hayden's got huge limitations in the Premier League level, but could he be any worse than what Joe Willock's playing at the moment? I would argue no. Even Jeff Hendrick could do a job. Even Jeff Hendrick, and that's what I'm saying. I really think Willock has dropped off a cliff. It could be a confidence thing. This languid striding on, this hanging back attitude could be a lad who's lost his confidence and just doesn't feel like he's playing well enough, feels like he's struggling. Take him out the team if that's the case. They're the big decisions. Like somebody said, the balls. Does Eddie Howe have the balls? He needs to have the balls to take Joe Willock out that side. He needs to definitely have the balls to have a long, hard look at Jamal Lascelles. And many people who listen to this show know that I'll stick up for him, because I do think he's a decent guy and I think he's all right as a player, but he's not really, he's really performing badly. Newcastle give away 6 penalties this season. He's given away 3 of them. I would struggle to think that there's been a player, if you go back 2 seasons, giving away as many penalties in the Premier League. It's quite a stark statistic, that. And I think he needs to take another team. Federico Fernandez needs brought back in, and it needs to happen now, not in a few games' time. I suspect we'll see changes with the games being Thursday, Sunday. We'll see a few changes on Thursday, and I think one of those might well be Fernandez. Whether it's for Lascelles or whether it's to play alongside him might be another point, though.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, that's for certain. And let's see what happens with COVID. Last couple of questions off Twitter before I jump onto the chat. Ian Hull and Saudi Dave both ask transfer-related questions. Ian says, the rumours of a deal being struck with Kieran Trippier true. What a statement of intent it is. And Dave says, Dele Alli's been told to find another club. Should we take a chance on him?
Players like Trippier and Ali would absolutely take the level up at Newcastle United. I've got absolutely no doubt about that. It depends what Dele Alli's mindset is. He's been wasted at Spurs for 18 months now. But I'd probably still take him. Yeah, I think he could. It's another positional thing. Yeah, I probably would take him. Yeah, I would take him. He could play off the front. He could play 10, couldn't he? That position where Joe Linton's playing at the moment. Transfers, Kieran Trippier. Yeah, so Kieran Trippier is a player that was said to me. It was said to me about a month ago that was a likely deal. That was all that was said, a likely deal in January. I think we'll have to wait and see on that one. There is a personal relationship there. He signed him when he was at Burnley. Fantastic career at Burnley, and he's gone on from strength to strength there at the likes of Spurs and Atletico Madrid at the moment. I think that's a deal that could happen. I do. Elsewhere, what else am I hearing transfer-wise? Heard bits and bobs about the lad at PSG, Diallo. Strange one, that, though. There seems to be some noises about being offered. what I would say about that one is he's likely to be away at AFCON with Senegal. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's noises that I've been hearing. I've been hearing about the Cody, me, and Tarkowski links. They do like them all, but whether they're short-term fixes or more things that you could address in the summer, I would argue it's probably the latter. Even though some of them are, I think 2 of them are seeing their contracts run out in the summer. I think that's one that might have to be addressed at a later date if they don't leave. I just don't see Burnley selling a player to Newcastle United. I don't see Wolves losing. I think is he their captain? I don't see Wolves letting that captain go in January either. And that's the type of thing you'd have to pay massively over the odds. I just don't think that'll happen. But no, trying to think who else I've heard linked. Yeah, Diallo was the one, but I just don't. For me personally, I don't see how that works when a lad's going to be potentially. Senegal got the final of AFCON last year, 2 years ago, I think it was. So that means if they did the same again, then he'd be out of action until February the 6th. Is that the type of signing Newcastle United are going to make to transform their defensive season? Lloyd Kelly is the other one. There is interest, I'm told, big interest in taking him from Bournemouth. But what the cost would be, I've no idea, because I think they signed him for more than 10 million a couple of seasons back. He's a recent England under-21 international, on the rise. They're going for promotion. They're right at the top of the division, fighting it out with the likes of Fulham and others to come straight back up. Is that the type of decision that a Bournemouth might be keen to make in January? I'm not so sure. But yeah, they're the players that at the moment in defensive quarters anyway that I'd heard linked and heard there is interest in.
Great stuff. Okay, big shout out to Spider VPN for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They come up to the top of your search list. They are the boys to trust for protecting everything on your computer. And big thanks as well to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors 01913897245. And to Garden of Healing Dispensary CBD Hemp and Cannabinoid Specialists www.thegohd.com. Thank you to Arcot Interiors as well, based on Heaton Road. Top-class kitchens from Arcot Interiors. Get yourself onto their website or give them a ring. And big thank you to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and sneaker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and the guy who runs our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to John at Jab Signature for making our flyers, jabsignature.co.uk. And also a big thank you to everybody in the chat, as always, for supporting us. If you are a new time visitor, then please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. And that's it. You can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video. Click share to your other social media. And drop into the comments box to leave a message for me or to have a chat with like-minded Newcastle fans. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Usually goes up within 24 hours of the show. And if you want to go to our website and you want to use your phone, just zoom over that with your camera. It will take you to the website and you can become an NUFC Matters member. We do a monthly members draw. We gave away a PlayStation 5 last week. I've still got a PlayStation 3, I think. But yeah, just get yourself onto there, put your phone over it, takes you directly to the website. You can subscribe to the membership package and you can end up with some chances to win some fairly special prizes. Got a few events coming up over the next couple of months. That's COVID permitting now, of course. But Peter Beardsley event is selling really well. And if you want to buy that as a ticket for a present, get yourself onto Groupon or voucher, 30th of January 2022 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. Of course, if we have the unfortunate lockdown, which is again being talked about, the event will still go ahead, but it'll just have to have a rearranged date. But at the moment, 30th of January is the date. Still make a nice Christmas present, Groupon and on voucher. And got a couple of others coming up in January. Smaller events, of course. At the Tyneside Irish Centre, we have an evening with Mick Mahoney on the 14th of January and an evening with Steve Watson on the 28th of January, both at the Irish Club, both £12. Tickets from NewcastleLegends.com. Click shop to buy your tickets. And we've got a festive Flyer from Skips and Pins. As always, he's loves to update Sir Bobby, and there he is with his little kids putting the presents under the tree. Thank you to skipsandbins.com. Always good to see. And it was good to see a couple of faces down at Leicester at the weekend. Got to thank Holly's mum for making the NUFC Matters Christmas hats for the journey. It was much appreciated, and the wonderful food that she sent down for us as well. But it was great to bump into Chris and to Pete, who obviously do a sterling job on a Monday night doing the fans forum, or as we called it last night, the 5-minute rant, because I think there was a few people wanting to rant. And you can just see that little face in the middle there. That is Ben Jacobs. We'll manage to meet Ben Jacobs at the bar, the Cowton House, just a walk from Leicester's ground. It was great to bump into Ben. And he introduced us to the guy Lee as well, who I might get on the show at some point, who was the man who put the bet on when Leicester won the league. And he was the man who put the fiver on the bet at 5,000 to 1. Unbelievable. Good to meet you.
I was devastated I couldn't. I'm sorry, I've never apologized since, but I was due to meet you that day, but I just couldn't. We didn't get there till a bit later on. We stopped on the way down and we didn't get there later on. So no, it was a shame.
No
always
problem.
Good to meet yourself and good to meet Pete and people like that. It's always good.
It was great to see Ben Jacobson. As I say, it was it's weird, isn't it? Because a lot of these people we'd met, but some of these other people you haven't met them, and just suddenly to be able to meet these people, at football games is great. And Ben's prediction was 5-0 to Leicester, so he was only 1 goal off.
We put a bet on then. I was putting a bet on.
I know. Well, I shook that guy. I couldn't stop shaking that guy's hand. I says, "Pass me some of that luck, mate. Pass me some of that luck." But okay, let's try and get on to a few of the points on the chat from people. Yano, he says, if the likes of West Brom and Fulham can attract players when they're in a relegation dogfight, then why would we struggle? Well, that's a good point. I've heard a lot of people saying players won't come to us, but as I've said all along, money does talk. Thank you for the donation deep in the snow. He says he wants to see 5 at the back against Liverpool and Man City and stuff the midfield with defensive minded players. I hate Bruce Ball, but we need to keep the store down. Let's get a point at least. And I think a lot of people will probably agree with that. Here's a question though, Liam, from Geordie Tuvalite. He says, are the referee standards going down in the Premier League? Because since Howe's been manager, we've had terrible refs and decisions against us. I'm not looking at this through black and white eyes. Now, this is something which we've talked about, and it's a talking point on social media as well. The referees, since this takeover went through, would be nothing short of abysmal. We've now got Mike Dean on Thursday. I mean, God, it couldn't get any worse. But the referees in the last 4 games, Liam, I think have been absolutely atrocious. We've not had the rub of the green. You get the feeling VAR's been switched off when it's a Newcastle game. And I think Maddison's dive was akin to Tom Daly at the Olympics. And yet he gets away with it. They get a penalty and the game changes. So what's your takes on the standard of refereeing?
I think the standard refereeing this season in general has been poor, but I think it's been poor for a lot of clubs. I don't think this is any... It's easy to fall back into some kind of conspiracy theorist idea that it's all against us, but I just don't believe that. I think the refereeing standards in England have dropped considerably over the last 5 to 10 years. Speak to somebody very regular who knows the refereeing game, and that's his opinion too, that just there isn't the standard of referees now. There's people coming up from the lower leagues who aren't deserving, wouldn't have got anywhere near a Premier League game a few years back, or regulars in the Premier League now, because that standard is dropping. You can have all the technology in the world. If it's not used correctly by skilled enough people, then you're going to get bad decisions. I would argue that Newcastle United have had a couple of decisions with VAR that if there was a conspiracy, you probably wouldn't get. Norwich penalty being one. A few others that you maybe wouldn't get that decision. But I think it was poor from the referee. Whoever decided that they shouldn't take a look at that, well, that was the VAR. People didn't alert the referee to say, maybe you need to have another look at that, mate. I think that's poor because it was a clear and obvious error. It was that the guy's already going. Look, there's nothing wrong with a guy trying to avoid a contact if he's going to get hammered, but that wasn't even the case. So you could say that was a penalty. If Lascelles is lashing out at him and he's had to jump to get out of the way from it, it's still a penalty. But it was nothing like that. It was nothing like it was a pure dive. But as I've said on this show before, that if you're a good side, you don't live on the edge. You don't rely on one decision to turn your whole game, because you're normally good enough to win a game of your own accord. Newcastle United are a poor side. The poorest Newcastle United have ever had in the top division since it turned into the Premier League. And they are relying on every decision going their way. The 50-50s have to go Newcastle United's way to give them a chance to get results in games. That needs to improve. And it is slowly improving. Although Sunday felt like a boot in the balls for that, didn't it, really?
It's funny, I was just going to describe it exactly the same.
Yeah, it did, because it was almost like, I remember when the third went in, I just got that feeling. And then when the fourth, you were like, you just fell back into type. You were like, God, this feels like this could be any game in Steve Bruce's reign. It's what it felt like. Although I argue the performance, that it wasn't as bad as a 4-0, but it was a 4-0. And I think Arsenal, I go back to the Arsenal game, I think there was probably about a 10-15 minute period in that second half where they threatened a defensive capitulation. Newcastle United could have gone like they did at Leicester, but Arsenal didn't keep the foot on the pedal. Leicester did take advantage of mistakes, kept their foot on the pedal in an attacking sense anyway, and just had that bit of guile and speed in the final third that maybe Arsenal lacked against Newcastle United, and forced a defensive capitulation. But that's it's annoying because it's something that it's just an old habit. It will not die.
It is. Let's try and get it through short answers for some of these other questions. Yano says, any news on Dummett?
I think he'll be back in January.
God. Tom Dixon says, any news on Sven Botman?
That was the name that I was meaning to come back to. Yeah, that it's another one that I've had mentioned to us as well. So that there is, I do believe there's interest there, but I think he's a level of player that I think there's going to be interest from a lot of clubs if he becomes available.
Yeah, okay. Would you take the captain's armband off Lascelles, says John?
No, I wouldn't, because I think it's a divisive move. I think it's a divisive move you don't need to make at this point in time, unless the player is deeply disliked within the dressing room and is blamed, and you know that it's causing problems in itself, him having the armband. But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I feel we need a new captain, but it's the timing of it. That's the problem,
Yes.
you know.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, they do need a new captain, but is now in a time of crisis the right time to make that change? And when you're playing such a difficult balancing act with a group of players that you need to keep on side, I would argue it isn't. If you sign a player in January who's an obvious captain, that's a good point. That's a point to make a change, not now.
Yeah, lots of people going on about ASM. There was loads of criticism at the match on Saturday.
There as well, in my opinion.
Mercedes Davies just basically says if Maxi used, concentrated on footballers as much as he does on social media, then maybe his performances would improve, which, you can see people are getting a bit sick of,
I think that's a petty point, personally. I agree with the sentiment. I agree with the sentiment that the guy should be performing better as a footballer. His social media is irrelevant, really.
Yeah, Dan says Fraser did more in the first 9 minutes against Norwich than ASM has done since Howe joined. Lots of negativity about him. You can see why, though. He's a luxury player. That's the problem.
Have Newcastle United got enough space in their team to have a luxury player is a big question that everybody should be asking themselves.
Yeah, he's frustrating. He's really frustrating. That's the problem. On his day, he's great. But at other times, he really is, frustrating. And that is a problem. Darren Lee Wells says, for the fans asking for Howe out, need to stay away. Howe not even got his own players in yet. Well said. Liam, any news on Dembele or Newcastle interested, says Tom?
The last I'd heard on him was a while back, but yeah, I'd heard they were interested. Yeah, but okay. I think that's one that's parked for a while down the line. I would suggest.
Darren's asking if there's any truth that we've been talking about getting Joe Gomez on loan.
I've not heard that one.
Okay, I've not heard that either, I've got to be honest, but good shout. Talking about the penalty, Muzza just says Dermot Gallagher said he'd not have given it on Ref Watch. Yeah, it was never a penalty. Absolutely never a penalty. Exposure TV, big shout out to you, mate. You will have Rafa back by January. you know, if he came in as a direct football, I wouldn't be surprised at all. You never know what's going on behind the scenes, but you know,
Here's one, Steve. Here's a
Mhm.
possibility. I know this is taking a total negative standpoint, but people keep talking about would Rafa come back, all this kind of thing. I don't, but I think having made the decision to stick with Eddie, to bring in Eddie Howe, I think they'll stick by him. I think they believe in him, they like him, and I think the only question marks of Eddie Howe would be if he doesn't keep Newcastle United in the division. And I think that would actually be, would you keep him? They might keep him beyond that if they got relegated, but I would argue that having got a job in November, you've got more than enough time to potentially keep Newcastle United in the division. And if you didn't do that, it would still be a failure no matter what went before.
Yeah, okay. Loads of points coming in now. Eddie Howe inherited a really bad squad. It's not his fault, says Keith. I would have thought Gerrard would have taken Newcastle over Villa, says Stu Brunt. He didn't, though. So, you know, we've just got to accept it. Or the owners didn't think that Gerrard was good. You just don't know the situation there. Jimmy says, do you think Wilson's got his back to goal all the time now? I think he's just chasing down blind alleys, hoping that people will find him with a pass at times.
Isolated. I think he's been isolated largely, and I think that's one thing I was going to come on to, is that I still don't believe that he's got the selection and the positioning of the players in the final third correct. I just don't believe he has. I don't think we're seeing the best of Alan St. Maxim on the left, even though everybody cries for him to play in that position. I don't believe that is his best position. I don't believe Joe Linton is a 10, and I certainly don't believe Miguel Almiron should be playing out on the right. There needs to be a rejigging of it. I would even argue potentially bring it. It's got to be an ASM or an Almiron into the middle, because that's both where they want to play. There's no point in having basically three players out of position, which is the way I see it. Joe Linton in this 10 is dropping far too deep. He's basically playing as a midfielder, which is not where you want him. Hence the fourth goal. You do all this talk of, you make a good midfielder. The bloke's a forward who's played out on the wing. He's not good, and he's suddenly turned into a centre midfielder overnight. If he plays centre midfield, he made mistakes like he did for the fourth goal, because he'd be playing against proper centre midfielders, would close him down and take the ball away from him. There needs to be a rejigging of this, in my opinion. Again, I'm not qualified. Eddie Howe's much more qualified than me to make these selection decisions. But I would argue that shifting Joe Linton out wide and putting one of those other two players who are playing out wide into the middle will be a pretty good start.
David says, is it a concern that Bruce was getting more out of ASM and Willock than Howe? I would see he wasn't getting much out of Willock. Like
Bruce got nothing out of Willock. No,
definitely not.
No, I mean, you're probably referring back to last season, David. I get that.
Yeah.
But not this season. You never got anything out of Willock. You could argue, mate, you got less out of Willock, because at least he's involved now, whereas he wasn't. He was barely involved before that.
The kid was on loan trying to get a move. That's what he was doing. He did it, and now
it looks like, doesn't it? It looks
for
like
whatever reason. But you don't become a bad player overnight. That's the problem. You don't just suddenly become bad. He was on a rich vein of form. You know, he's hit a bit of a brick wall. Maybe it's the formation's not suiting him. Who knows? You know. Anthony says there are only 6 points between the bottom six, and we're in a better financial position than any of them to strengthen in January. Players will come and we will survive. Yeah, sorry I didn't see Anthony. I seen your post there before. I'm sure we'll catch up at some point, mate, during the season. I'm going to Anfield on Thursday. It's going to be a long day, that, but you never know. Funny how things have happened. We've won down there with worse teams, so never say never. Holly will be laughing at that now. Outside of the goalie, Eddie's got no area right yet. Says, yeah, I know, tough that. Like, Willock does not look like the same player as we had last season. Correct.
Well, I would say on Willock. Can I quickly jump in on Willock?
Yeah,
really quick, Steve. Everybody, again, it's a revision of history, and I remember talking about this at the time. Joe Willock was in and out of the team even when he was on loan last season. He went through a really rich goal-scoring run, some of which, the start of that run, those goals were coming off the bench. I think people forget that. He was coming into games and chipping in with goals. He wasn't always starting. And there was a lot. I remember sitting on this show, and it was about 3 weeks after he'd signed. People were slaughtering him, saying he wasn't good enough. This isn't a lad. This is a lad who went through a ridiculous goal scorer and run of form, and it was brilliant. And I don't disagree. I'm not going to revise history myself. I would have went all out to sign him too. I would have done the same thing. But was he ever as good as his goals? Probably not. And I think we're seeing that now. I just worry that I thought he was better than what he's shown now. I thought he was better than that. It could be a confidence thing. He doesn't look like a lad who's brimming with confidence to me. really doesn't. Just the way he carries himself, he doesn't.
Me neither. Yes, Lee Marshall, this is going to be the permanent time for me and Liam. It suits us both better, I think. We've both got responsibilities at home, and it just gives me another night off, really, to be fair. So, yeah, it suits us both doing it this time in the morning after Liam's early conference call, which can vary in times. But look, the main thing is you get an answers to your questions from somebody who is a lot more in the know than I am, and that's why we love doing this show. And me and Liam actually got a chance to meet for a coffee last week and a bit of a natter, which was great, meeting each other face to face again, which, as I say, for a long period of time we couldn't do. So lots of positivity, and I know a lot of people are keen on Liam and his book. Where don't worry, the book will come, but it'll come when it's ready. It will come when it's ready. No announcements on that yet, but the Takeover book is definitely happening. He just needs to get all these ducks in a row and his dots joined, and once it's done, it's done. But it's going to be a cracking book, believe you me, and it's the inside story to the Takeover. So keep an eye out for that.
Steve, do you know what? How much would that wind critics up if it was called Joining the Dots?
I tell you what, good idea. Yeah, there we go. We've come up with a title, just chatting there online. As always, I need a prediction off you, mate. And we've got two big games coming up before I see you again. Liverpool away, Man City at home. Quick predictions, mate.
3-0 loss at Liverpool, and I'm being reasonably positive about that. 3-0 loss at Liverpool and 2-0 loss, or maybe 2-1 loss at home to Manchester City. That'll be my two predictions.
Liam, as always, mate, have a great week and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, pal. Take care.
Cheers.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.